What's going on, people? LP2000 coming back at you with another figure review. This time I'm going to be doing the X Plus 30 centimeter diamond reissue Godzilla 1954. I don't have the original Japanese release. I got the diamond reissue, and I want to talk about that today. So first of all, let's get into the box. Typical 30 centimeter box, just like all the rest of them, or at least a good majority of them. Where you have the picture of the figure here on the front, his face on the back, as always, S Plus Garage Toy, PX, previews, exclusive, signifying that it is a diamond reissue. His name, Godzilla, as well as the Japanese language title of the film, Godzilla 1954, or as we come to know in the United States, Godzilla, King of the Monsters. That's pretty much it. This is the box. That's it, with your legal drawing on the back. And that's it. Now, let's get into the figure. This is a really cool figure. And this was arguably was in the first wave of the Diamond X Plus deal back in late 2013. And I heard there was some problems with this figure, as far as like the paint apps being off, or I think they did some it wasn't true to the original form when it comes to the eyes and stuff. But as far as mine, I think mine is absolutely perfect. I will say that the pupils on mine is a little bit darker than on the original Japanese release that came out in 2011. But this is really a cool figure. I think Diamond really did a good job on this figure. Now, like I said in other videos, in other early waves, like this wave, Mechagodzilla 74 came out with this figure. It had a leaning leg issue with his leg looked deformed. There was some paint app problems with the next wave, the GMK Godzilla, as well as the Gargantua brothers. But this is one figure that in the first two waves, I believe they really did a good job on. The paint app is really good. It's in monochrome, meaning it's in black and white, which is how we first saw him. There was a Wonderfest Godzilla 54 of this sculpt that came out like a few years later, where it was in a color scope, a color scheme, excuse me, where it had like a bone white color on the dorsal plates, some redness on the tongue, and they basically just colorized the figure. But I prefer the monochrome, because like I said, it's just how we first saw him in the first movie. The sculpt is really good. He has his standard iconic Godzilla pose with his arms out, and I really do enjoy that. I really do enjoy the fact that they took a lot of detail, especially when it comes to the bulkiness of the suit. They paid very good attention to detail here, especially with the musculature in his thighs and his arms and his chest and his tail. It's very prehistoric looking, which was the message behind the first film in the first place. Really awesome. Really good. And he is a big figure. As a matter of fact, I'm somewhat bigger than I thought he would be. He stands like around 12 and a half to 13 inches tall. And he does command a lot of space when on your shelf. And I love the dorsal plates. Once again, very prehistoric looking. And this I'm really fascinated by Godzilla's dorsal plates, especially in the Showa era, because this is basically how every suit in the Showa era, with the exception of maybe the Godzilla 55 or the Godzilla 1975. But every other Showa suit had this type of arrangement on his dorsal plates, where you have a small plate here, a second bigger one, the third bigger one, then it goes back to small and small, whatever. That's how it was almost on every other Showa suit. Like I said, with the exception of Godzilla 55 and Godzilla 75, their dorsal plate arrangement was kind of weird a little bit. But other than that, every other Showa suit had this kind of dorsal plate arrangement. Not the same dorsal plates per se, but the same dorsal plate arrangement. I really do enjoy this figure. I really do love it. And considering how the movie was in black and white and it was kind of dark, we never really got to see Godzilla's face that much, especially on the suit. We did in certain scenes and certain skirmishes or whatever, but it's ironic because the time that we see the Godzilla suit is at night. Now the Godzilla did appear in the film in daytime scenes, but those were like Muppet control like puppets. Not Muppet, excuse me, but they were like puppet controlled models that would give off facial expressions, but it didn't really match the facial features of the suit. So the only time we really saw this suit was at nighttime, and being in black and white, it was kind of hard to make out Godzilla's face. But with the figure, um, he really does have a, I won't say menacing face, but it's somewhat intimidating a little bit, especially with his pupils being down here and like his eyeballs are really wide or whatever, and his fangs and everything, and it's just really cool figure. Not the most intimidating Godzilla out there per se. I would chalk up the most intimidating being the GMK or the Godzilla 64. Those Godzillas have really mean faces. But this Godzilla here doesn't really have it. But it's a good thing about having the figure. You get to see what the face actually truly look like unless you pause the film or whatever. But other than that, this is a really cool figure. I highly recommend it. I know it may not be everybody's favorite or whatever, because I know everybody has different favorite Godzillas for different reasons or whatever. But I still feel as a Godzilla fan, he should be on your shelf. You know, the first. I mean, the classic Godzilla. Without this Godzilla, there would have been no other Godzillas at all. If this film wasn't a success, then it wouldn't have spawned the Kaiju Eiga, or the Japanese giant monster genre. Now, as far as Godzilla is concerned, as far as the movie is concerned, there are two versions of it. The original Gojira, 1954, then they Americanized it 2 years later as Godzilla King of the Monsters, 1956. There's a Blu-ray out there from the Criterion Collection. You can find it at Barnes & Noble, or you can find it like online at Amazon or whatever. But they present they came out with Godzilla, but they brought out both prints, the original Japanese print as well as the Americanized version, Godzilla King of the Monsters. I highly recommend you pick that up. It's from the Criterion Collection. The print of the original Godzilla is very good. There's hardly any grain spots. The American version, there is some grain here and there, but it's still a good, pristine condition of the Americanized version of the film. And it has interviews with Akira Takarada, Haruo Nakajima, who explained what it was like to play Godzilla for the first time. It has like an interview, or at least an interview with somebody that talks about the Lucky Dragon #5, one of the real life events that inspired the original Godzilla film in the first place. It really is a good, great piece. It's a great Blu-ray to have. So I highly recommend you pick that up. It's from the Criterion Collection. So as far as Godzilla or Godzilla is concerned, from my perspective, I grew up on the American version, Godzilla King of the Monsters. And I found the Japanese print of the movie like some years later. And I grew up, like I said, watching Godzilla King of the Monsters as a kid. And as an adult, I've grown to appreciate the Japanese film a little bit more. However, I do feel that the Godzilla King of the Monsters, the Americanized version, I wouldn't say is the better film of the two, but I would say that it is superior in some ways with the original Japanese release. Now, with the original Japanese release, they really drive home the fact of, they really present Godzilla as a dark, gritty, serious metaphor of the misuse of nuclear weapons and the repercussions that could bring because of that misuse. With the Godzilla King of the Monsters, you don't get that same message. It's more like Giant Monsters on the Loose, which was a very popular thing with other films in the 50s. Like Them or The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which one of the films was also inspired Godzilla to come out. But it was more so Monster on the Loose. The great character development and the great messages behind the original Godzilla is not present in the Americanized version. In the Japanese version, the characters are more defined. Like Dr. Yamane, for example. You find out in the Japanese version how he really was against Godzilla being destroyed and how he wanted to have him preserved for study. They only touch on that in the American version a little bit, but they really drive home that fact in the Japanese version. In the Japanese version, Godzilla is 50 meters tall, 150 feet, or like 165 feet. In the American version, he's beefed up for 400 feet tall. But I would say, out of the two, of course, the original Godzilla is the most powerful of the two. But like I said, I do kind of favor the Americanized one in certain areas. Like, for example, when Godzilla first comes to Odo Island in both films, in the original Japanese version, of course, they have the scene where everybody comes to Odo Island and to investigate and to find out what's going on, and they interrogate the natives on the island. Then they go through that ceremony where the guy in the mask do that folk dance. And then the storm comes out of nowhere, and then Godzilla comes. You don't see him, but and then that's pretty much the end of that scene. In the American version, they kind of build up that scene, which is probably my most favorite scene in the film, where you have Raymond Burr, who was in the American version, the guy who played Perry Mason. And that's another thing. When I saw the American version, before I saw the Japanese, I thought for years that Raymond Burr was along with the original Japanese cast. It wasn't until I found out later that they shot around those scenes, but they blended the footage so well that you actually would think that Raymond Burr is interacting with the Japanese cast. But what they did was they put him in certain scenes, certain background, and the people that he was supposedly talked to from the original Japanese release, you would have them shot from the back, so you didn't really see their faces, just to blend in with the original Japanese footage to make you believe that Raymond Burr was actually there. But I found that very interesting. But anyways, like I was saying about that scene, they show Raymond Burr and his Japanese friend, I think his name was Iwanaga, in a tent, and they both just sitting there trying to go to sleep. But all of a sudden, it's like you hear like the slow thumping of some gigantic footsteps. It's like it slowly it gets quieter, then it slowly builds up to be louder. Like boom, like something's coming, boom, then the storm comes. And then they show the guy in the house runs out, and the guy runs after him, and then the flash of light illuminates Godzilla. Then they added more sound effects, and that was just a really, really cool scene to have. I'm glad how the American version kind of improved upon that. The pacing in the American version is kind of better. Ironically, in the American version, is half of the film is told through a flashback, versus the original Japanese version it is happening. The events unfold as they go along. But like I said, I really do enjoy both films. I prefer the Japanese over the American version, but I do feel that the American version can hold its own in certain ways. Especially even at the end. At the end of the at the end of the Japanese version, they kind of teased that Dr. Yamane kind of was after Godzilla's defeated, after he's dissolved by the oxygen destroyer, that Dr. Yamane kind of wonders out loud if nuclear testing if nuclear testing will continue, there may be another Godzilla that will appear somewhere in the world. In the American version, they cut that part out, and I think it's kind of ironic because when it comes to the Heisei version of Godzilla movies or the Millennium movies, they kind of ignore all the events that happen between Godzilla King of the Monsters or between Godzilla King of the Monsters and Godzilla 84. I think it's ironic where it's the Japanese version that kind of leads up to the events that happen between those two films, but the American version kind of like it goes along with what the Japanese kind of intended for the series to be, where they ignore everything that happened between Godzilla King of the Monsters and Godzilla 1984 and so forth. But this really is a good film. It really is an important film, a legendary film. It's a really dark, gritty, serious film. It's not really meant for kids. It really shows Godzilla as this unstoppable force of nature and how to deal with him, and how he's basically the consequences of what we humans have done to nature and how nature is responding. And they chose a dark, unstoppable force to convey that. Like for example, there's a scene where Godzilla attacks Tokyo for the second time in the movie at night. There's a scene of a woman clutching her three children, and she says something in Japanese. Now they don't really translate that in the American version, but in the Japanese version, she's basically saying while she's clutching her children while Godzilla's attacking above them, that someday, not someday, but don't worry, children, we'll join Daddy in heaven soon. That's not meant for kids. So just be mindful of that when you watch this movie. But other than that, this is really, really a great movie. Really, really a great figure. I highly recommend it. You can find it for a good price, which I think you can. He's still around the $150 to $200 range. He's still an important piece of Godzilla history. The first Godzilla. And which basically without this Godzilla, we wouldn't have everything that we have now with the hobby, with the figures, with the movies. Everything that we come to love about Godzilla starts with this one. So I highly recommend this figure. If you can find them, I highly suggest you pick them up, and then you'll be satisfied with the purchase if you do get them. But other than that, that's pretty much it with my review. The 30 centimeter Godzilla 1954 from the classic and iconic film Godzilla 1954, or the Americanized version Godzilla King of the Monsters. I thank y'all for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see y'all again on the next figure and movie review. Y'all have a good day. Take care. Bye.